Hey everyone, I'm Jen Friesen,
I'm Katy Faust.
and this is the Them Before Us podcast / YouTube video, house car.
That's right.
Very chill.
COVID-19, escape to your car so that the kids don't interrupt the video stream. Yeah.
I had my window open. There's like construction or yard work. I just shut it again. And we're really excited. We're talking a little bit about chapter 2 of the Them Before Us book today that Katy and Stacy are writing. So we're really excited. We were talking a little bit about the chapter. I got to read it ahead of time, which was super cool. It's packed full of just stats and stories and so many different things. But we thought a good place to start would be when we talk about biology, or we talk about all these different reasons that we think children deserve to be with their mom and dad, we get a lot of pushback, kind of 3 big objections to what Them Before Us is kind of presenting. And Katy and I are going to kind of recreate these together. But one of them is, the big picture is kids just want to be loved. Like, as long as kids are just like safe and loved, like it's totally fine. Any combination of adults are fine. And when you start talking a little bit, you hear about, well, these step parents are awesome, perfect, they're so great. Well, what about abusive, biological parents? So let's kind of just unpack a little bit some of those objections when we talk about biology.
Yeah. So chapter 2 is just called Biology Matters. Because if you spend any amount of time in the data, and if you are looking honestly at people's stories, both from the parents' perspective and from the children's perspective, it's very obvious that biology matters. Mm-hmm. And certainly, what you just kind of headlined there, that kids don't need their biological parents, they just need to be safe and loved, is one of the biggest objections that we hear. And the very short answer to that is yes, kids need to be safe and loved. But the research tells us that there is a place where they are statistically the most likely to be safe and loved, and that is in the home of their married biological mother and father. And that biology actually plays a really important role in making sure that kids are loved and safe. And so, we do hear the objection, like, look, there's abusive biological parents out there and there's saintly step parents. And you know what? Those are both true. Biological parents who abuse their kids are the chief offenders when it comes to people who fail to put them before us.
Right.
And we will give them all the condemnation in the world. And there are step parents who are doing heroes work, filling the void for a biological parent who failed their kid. And those are both realities, but they're also outliers. Statistically, the safest person in a child's life will be their biological mother and father. And statistically, the most dangerous person in a child's life is a cohabiting, unrelated adult male. And so we can acknowledge the exceptions and still be very clear about the rule. And the rule is, when it comes to parenthood, biology matters.
Yeah, there's a number in the chapter of, and we've posted some of these charts and graphs, I think before, or in some different articles, but just looking at, it was really sobering. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, when you look at all the different combinations of adults that could be in the house and just how much it trends upward, the lowest was always mom and dad. And then it just kind of went up from there. But like you said, the most dangerous was basically, single parent with a partner, but even you could type in the news, like you said, mom's boyfriend and murder, and like how many things that would pop up in the news.
Yeah, it's really scary. We quote a lot when you're talking about child maltreatment and filicide, which is killing your kids. It's not a question of whether or not non-biological adults are less safe. It's how much less safe are they? What data are you looking at that shows that these kids are 12 times at risk, or these kids are like 50 times at risk, or whatever it is, of being at risk of abuse and death at the hands of an unrelated cohabiting man, typically. And so we're really playing with kids' lives, honestly, when we are going to disregard the importance of biological connection in parenthood.
We touched on that, I think, in previous discussions about the impact of divorce too, that it's not even like statistically that mom will have one boyfriend in the next decade. It's that we'd see over, like divorce just kicks off
Right.
number of those relationships breaking and starting and breaking and starting. So even if you got one good one great guy, and then she dates 3 more times or whatever, you're just,
Yeah.
you see all this, all the potential for danger that could be.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's risk involved, there's very serious risk involved when a new partner enters the picture, especially when that partner is living with the child, and especially when that partner is left to care for the child alone.
Can you talk a little bit about the Cinderella effect? I know who Cinderella is, but I didn't know what that was before kind of looking through the chapter.
Yeah, well, you read about the Cinderella effect and you suddenly realize this is where those fairy tales come from, because some of this behavior obviously has been observed throughout the ages. And the idea of the Cinderella effect is it's a theory from evolutionary biologists who say, look, primates, they treat their own offspring differently than they treat offspring of other men, other adult males. And so you see in the animal kingdom, it's not uncommon for the mother's new mate to kill the offspring, the previous offspring, so that they don't compete for the resources of their own offspring, right?
Wow.
And so that's the theory that some evolutionary biologists have posed as to why non-biological adults don't give the same level of protection and care and investment into their non-biological children in their home. And we always want to say we know that there's great step parents out there. There really are. But then when you look at the studies of step parents don't tend to allocate as much money in their wills to their stepkids. Stepkids tend to go to college like 1 full year less.
Wow.
Stepmothers, even though they're not as dangerous as statistically as stepfathers, they are more in charge of like the everyday well-being of kids. And we see that kids with stepmothers don't go to the doctor as often, don't have as much money spent on their food, don't wear seatbelts as much as the children of our biological kids do. And we've got some quotes from step parents, who are speaking under condition of anonymity, talking about how they just don't feel as responsible for their non-biological children because they're like, well, I'm not their parent. They have a mother somewhere and that's not me. Yeah. So there's a lot going on when we're disregarding the importance of biology that kids have to figure out.
Yeah. I was gonna say we're seeing very different things when people kind of respond to Them Before Us on Twitter or respond to on Facebook and kind of make these claims. But then when you go into more anonymous spaces where people can kind of share more either their own treatment at the hands of different adults who've been in their lives or what they think about their stepkids is very different when they have kind of the anonymity.
Yeah. And blended families are hard. Even when everybody's doing their best, it's difficult. And then you throw in a situation where there's some real household friction and it can get pretty frustrating pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Just to wrap up, can you touch a little bit on how does this maybe especially impact kids who've been donor conceived?
Yeah. So they may struggle with a lot of the same things that children and step families struggle with, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes that social parent, the one that raised them, has been there since birth, and sometimes they have a very strong attachment to their social parent, but they still crave something that only their biological parents can give them, and that's biological identity. Mm-hmm. That what we see from children who have been adopted or donor conceived, that they overwhelmingly have a drive to find out, who is my biological parent? And it's not necessarily a matter of receiving love and care and support and investment, because sometimes their social parent has done that really well. But there's still this missing piece that only the biological parent can provide. What are their interests? What do they look like? What are their hobbies? Do they think about me? Do they want to know who I am? I want to know who they are. And so even if you have adults that are safe and connected to the kids, biology still matters because it provides something that kids crave, and that's biological identity.
Yeah. Even thinking about people who need to know their medical history, who thinking about biology matters when you're thinking about who you date And we've heard stories like that of people who, you know, in theory could have 100 plus half siblings in their geographical area. And you kind of don't know those things because that piece has sort of been stripped away.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of very practical implications for kids that are separated from their birth parents, especially when maybe they don't even know that they're donor conceived, or they find out later in life and they suddenly go, well, crap. I mean, not only are there half sibling issues, but now my children may have hundreds of second cousins. And what if dozens of them live in my town and they don't know they're donor conceived? So messing with a child's lineage at this level, it doesn't come without significant fallout.
Yeah. And I mean, we have not even seen some of the implications of this yet because it's so relatively new. We're just starting to see all of it. And I think that's what's so important about what Them Before Us is doing is I had never thought about these things before. You know, you're just kind of like, okay, well, live and let live, and not considering the ethical, like what ethically should and should not happen because it does impact more people than we think. So
yeah. For sure, live and let live, unless you living costs children something they have a natural right to.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. I'm really excited for our conversation about our next chapters coming up. Thanks, Katie. And we'll talk to you guys or see you later.
Great to chat with you.